This is Strange New Trek, a podcast about the life and times of Captain Christopher Pike. And now your hosts. Among the Lotus Eaters, which apparently isn't as racist as it sounds, just means spending time around people who like to spend their time looking for pleasure, which doesn't sound like a bad way to go until you watch this episode. I'm not going to say it's one of the worst episodes of Star Trek, but I will say it's one of the worst episodes of Strange New World. I don't even want to admit that there's an episode of this show that I don't like, but I don't like this episode. I'm your host, Jeremy Vilmer. This is Strange New Treks. Joining me today is our chief transporter, engineer, and bottle washer, Henry Janeway. What's happening, Henry?
Oh, just enjoying the new promotion, brother. You know how it is.
Mm-hmm. And also joining us is my number one dog, Commander Dog, who is pacing around nervously around the table. So I'm hoping we don't have an engineering accident around our recording area. Do we want to say anything about this one before we even get started, or do you want to just jump in?
I don't want to do either. We could probably fill the whole hour and a half, 2 hours even, of just talking about all the things I've got into to avoid getting into this episode. This one was just rough on quite a few levels.
So what's weird about that is just going off the cage, or the menagerie. I guess the cage isn't really an episode of the show. I'd always been curious, hey, what happened on Rigel 7? We had some idea.
Bet you regret that curiosity now.
I really do. Did I ever tell you about how I thought I caused COVID?
Huh.
Okay, so I'm spending the night with a lady friend in Monterey, 2019, New Year's Eve going to 2020.
Right.
Doing the stuff you do in a hotel room with a lady friend that you don't see more than once every few months.
Parcheesi, of course.
What we were doing was room service in HBO.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah. And I woke up the next morning at 7, January 1st, 2020, and I step out in the hallway. Now, this is an old house that had been converted into hotel rooms, so the walls are paper thin. And I could hear everybody else playing Parcheesi or watching HBO or getting room service. And all I thought was, man, here it is, 7 a.m., January 1st, and everybody's already playing Parcheesi. What could possibly go wrong this year? What could possibly go wrong this year? And now I'm starting to wonder if maybe this episode was my fault as well.
Well, I'll do you a favor just because you're my cousin, not report you to Fleet Command over this one.
I hope so.
But we'd better just get into it.
Captain's personal log, stardate 1630.1. Enterprise is currently assisting the USS Cayuga in a joint mission charting a new binary system. Captain Battelle and I are taking advantage by attempting a perilous maneuver of our own, stealing a little personal time.
Ooh.
I like that they gave these two ships' captains a relationship. Because one of the difficult things about original Trek, and even Next Generation, nobody really had a romantic life. Nobody really had a personal life. Or if they did, they didn't even hint at it outside of the show, or whatever.
Like what they're doing for work, yeah.
Yeah. So I find it cool and interesting that we get to see what these two ships' captains are doing. I will give this episode that.
Yeah, it's definitely a good bit, and it does result in some good dialogue, I think, from the two. One of a very few kudos I'll give it.
Very, very few.
Yeah.
So the Enterprise and the Cayuga are conducting a survey in a binary star system. Pike of the Enterprise is preparing dinner when Captain Marie Battelle pays him a visit, bringing him a Mariner's Keystone as a gift. However, their conversation is interrupted several times, including news about Battelle being passed over for promotion to Commodore in favor of William Geary. I don't know that that's a character that we know.
Not to my recollection.
Yeah. Battelle attributes the decision partly to her connection with Pike, obviously Una's reinstatement into the fleet because that Vulcan guy, and it seemed like some of the Admiralty was really against it. Pike is concerned about their long-distance relationship affecting her career and suggests maybe we should just go ahead and kibosh this. She gets upset and bounces. First off, when a woman states that there's a problem, she wants you to listen, not to fix it. And the way, even if she expects you to try to fix it, dumping her ass isn't the way to do it.
No.
So, Captain Pike, you knew that. You knew better than that. We saw you with the hot redhead on the channel, or on the episode where they used children to power their planet. You knew better. Later, Una briefs Pike about their past mission to Rigel 7, where they encountered the Kalar, and they had to evacuate due to complications and an ambush, leaving behind Starfleet insignias. So, in this, we got a reference Menagerie and how they referenced Rigel 7.
Right.
So we know Pike's yeoman was killed because that's why there's that really sexist line about I can't get used to a woman on the bridge, excepting you, of course, number one.
Right.
His yeoman was dead, so the new yeoman took over. We also know they were headed to a starbase to resupply and drop off their wounded and get new crew members.
Right.
That was part of what they were doing. One of the other things, I don't know if you've ever come across this, in that episode, Spock has a limp.
I have not, actually.
Next time you watch the Menagerie or the Cage, keep an eye out, because Spock limps throughout the episode. And you'll see people ask from time to time, why is Spock limping?
Right.
Because they decided that Leonard Nimoy, or Spock, had probably been injured since he would have been one of the ground crew, and he decided to walk with a limp. And then, of course, one of the fantasies Pike is given by the Telosians was being attacked by a Kalar on Rigel 7. But, of course, he was different looking than the Kalar we're about to see. He was extra large, jagged teeth.
Right. Those were the premium edition Kalar.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. The Pokemon Evolution 1 series, yeah. Starfleet has discovered that the Kalar are using these insignias, and a plan is made to make a covert mission to assess the situation and retrieve any left-behind tech. I think if it's just insignia, I would have left it alone.
So here's the first of my big issues with what we got going on here. Mm-hmm. Assuming, because, we just know about what the original mission was just from what you went on here, and just a few scant details. Enterprise comes back with a bunch of wounded crew members, high-level officers are dead, injured. Wouldn't that be a conflict of interest to send the same people back to handle that mission?
I would certainly think so. And you have to remember where Pike was in the Cage / the Menagerie. He was ready to quit Starfleet over what had just happened.
Yeah.
It was such a disaster that, I don't see them being able to send the same ship back.
I mean, I know Enterprise is the only ship in the quadrant and everybody else isn't going to get their equipment until next Tuesday.
Right,
but
right.
Come on. Send a shuttle.
Well, we also know they have those little Archer class 3-4 person single nacelle bangers. They can just zip out and zip back.
Yeah.
Send one of those.
You'd think that even by now they would have a team dedicated
for this kind of thing.
Right.
I have to assume, we know that the mission to Rigel 7 happened before General Order 1 / the Prime Directive were taken seriously, because first off, it didn't exist during the Cage / the Menagerie. Also because they've been talking about it during Season 1 and Season 2 of Strange New Worlds.
Right.
There are a few things here. The staying out of cultures that aren't ready for you kind of thing, they should have done a better job of having it not exist. Or maybe, I know it existed on Enterprise, but it was used for really bad reasons throughout that show.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little more about the Enterprise when we get to our Subspace Communications section at the end of the show. Got a few comments. Una and Pike discuss personal matters, including Pike's tendency to distance himself from close relationships. Una encourages him to find joy despite his responsibilities. Pike reflects on his leadership during the previous mission and feels responsible for the situation with the Kalar, which is exactly why he should be recused. Starfleet assigns them the current mission as a reminder for the Enterprise to rectify its past actions. That works for tattoo artists, not for not for cultural interference. Yeah, you're right. It seems like there'd be like a ship.
Yeah.
Who's just like, oh, that went poorly. Let's go see.
Call them in. Yeah.
Let's go see what these guys can do. This episode delves into Pike's personal conflicts, his sense of responsibility, and the challenges faced by the crew while addressing the consequences of their earlier encounter with the Kalar civilization on Rigel 7. Act 1. In this episode's first act, Captain Pike, along with Ortegas, La'an, Dr. Mbenga, they prepare for a landing on Rigel 7. They're all dressed in Kalar clothing for an undercover reconnaissance. Spock reports on the debris field that threatens the Enterprise's orbital plane, requiring manual adjustment to prevent damage. Now, Ortegas was really, really, really looking forward to going on this mission.
Right.
We as fans of this show now know they're never going to let her go do anything that matters.
Such a disappointment, too.
It really is.
Like, the whole B-plot, like, even the last episode with Lon and her storyline, I believe that was the last episode.
Yeah.
Whenever we get into the timey-wimey stuff, I can't tell if we already did it or if we're about to do it.
We're about to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure you know what? Either we have done or we will be recording that one soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, we have such a good episode with her and her backstory and getting into her head a little bit. Una, with her trial, we had such a good episode with her. It feels kind of like the whole B-plot of this episode feels kind of like a cop-out. Like, yeah, it's focusing on Ortegas. Yeah, it's focusing on her relation to being helmsman of the Enterprise, but it's just...
It feels like a non-story.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels... She's a great character.
Yeah,
give her an episode.
She's a great character. Her acting is fun to watch.
Yeah.
Her in that character. Yeah, I'd like to see more. And I don't think we've gotten an Ortegas episode. I
don't think we have. And if you would have asked me before we had got to this episode in the podcast, when I had just finished my first watch through of season 2 of Strange New Worlds, I would have pointed to this one as the Ortegas episode. But now that I've got the first watch through done, I've got the hype goggles off, and I'm going through it with a little more critical mind. It's not. It's just kind of oh, hey, here's a token,
Yeah, exactly. Also, as a weird sudden aside, on the original series, so Ortegas and Mitchell on the original series would have been wearing gold. But I've noticed on this show, only Una and Pike on that ship seem to wear gold. Everybody else is red on the bridge.
Yeah. Well, except Spock.
Except Spock, who's sciences, so obviously.
And then Chapel, who's wearing all white, which wasn't she in blue as well in the original?
She was in blue, but she wasn't in a traditional, because she also had a blue collar on her dress usually, so it was different than the other Star Trek dresses. Now, if that's what nurses wore, we don't really have anything to judge against.
Right.
But we know it was not a standard Starfleet uniform.
Another section for the uniform code.
Mm-hmm. Pike pilots the shuttle through the atmospheric disturbances caused by ancient impacts. Upon landing, they trek towards a Kalar settlement, taking only culturally appropriate items to avoid further contamination. La'an experiences disorientation and hears ringing in her ears, leading to a loss of time perception. Despite concerns, they push forward. Again, somebody loses time on an away mission.
Not even on an away mission. On a top secret, super covert, high-speed, low-drag Space Navy SEAL type mission.
Get them out of there. You get them out of there, right? Hey, what happened to you? I don't know. We just walked for 3 hours and you forgot it. We're out of here.
I hate to be that guy on this. I really do, because the people are like, oh, hey, it wasn't like that. And no nicer way to say it. Shut up.
Yeah.
It's a different story. It goes on. But, let me be a hypocrite real quick here. If Rigel 7 was a planet that made you do this kind of thing, just forget that you're walking for 3 hours, wouldn't they have already known that?
I would have thought they would have known it. Maybe whatever is worse than when they were there 5 years ago.
That's certainly convenient off of 1,000-year-old whatever it was.
I'm not willing to buy that, but maybe that's the case. Maybe the conditions have gotten worse. I don't buy it. Observing the Kalar fortress, they spot the Starfleet Delta symbol and guards wielding Starfleet phasers. Pike realizes their gear might have been left behind during their previous encounter. As they attempt diplomacy, they are confronted by Kalar warriors, and Mbenga experiences disorientation too. To Pike's surprise, the Kalar leader is revealed to be his former yeoman, Zach Nguyen, alive and now ruling as High Lord Zacharias. Nguyen accuses Pike of abandoning him and explains that the planet's radiation causes symptoms leading to Kalar transformation. He refuses to leave and plans to watch Pike suffer. Do you watch Rick and Morty?
I do.
Froopy Land?
I didn't put it together, but now that you mention it.
Did you not think of Froopy Land when you saw this episode?
Now that you mention it, I am now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, what did they do?
The team is imprisoned, experiencing varying degrees of memory loss and disorientation due to the planet's effects. La'an is unconscious and disoriented when she wakes, not even recognizing her own name. Pike struggles to recall why they are there as he too begins experiencing symptoms. So, there are two people on this away team that would be super dangerous should they lose their faculties. Mbenga and La'an. Now, we don't know about how dangerous Mbenga is yet, but we've had a hint.
We've had enough of a hint to know we don't want to find out.
Yeah. And La'an, look, you can tell me that she's not genetically engineered, but she has superior mangled up genetics in her background. And we know she's a super badass because she went toe-to-toe with Una during that one.
Right.
Again, I got to go back to you on it. I realize they have a story to tell.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of errors in judgment that I didn't even really consider when first looking at this episode, that after you brought that up about sending that ship to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a lot here. No wonder I don't like this episode, because there's a lot that doesn't stand up to even the most initial scrutiny.
Yeah.
Act 2. In this part of the episode, a series of events unfold aboard the Enterprise and on the surface of Rigel 7. On the Enterprise, crew members including Uhura start experiencing symptoms like the ringing in the ears, disorientation, and memory loss. Uhura in particular begins to exhibit severe neurological issues. Nurse Chapel, concerned about Uhura's condition, administers a sedative and advises rest. Meanwhile, several crew members, including those from engineering, report acute memory loss. In the Kalar fortress, Pike, La'an, and Mbenga find themselves among the Kalar with no recollection of their identities or how they ended up there. Luke, a Kalar, guides them and explains the concept of forgetting on the planet, where individuals lose their memories every day. They are assigned menial tasks based on the colors of their clothing, representing various occupations. Pike struggles with this new reality and realizes they don't belong there. A scuffle breaks out when Pike and La'an confront the Kalar guards. In the chaos, La'an gets injured, prompting Mbenga to assist her. Pike begins to remember fragments of his past and realizes the significance of an item gifted to him, the Opilian Mariner's Keystone. Luke, understanding Pike's determination to save their memories, agrees to help them locate a mythical casket that supposedly aids the Palace Kalar in retaining their memories. Back on the Enterprise, Spock and Una also experience memory loss and strategize a way to mitigate the effects of the mysterious ailment affecting the crew. Spock proposes moving the ship away from the planet to safeguard the crew's well-being, while Una insists on not abandoning the landing party. Eventually, they decide to navigate the ship into a debris field that may shield them from the planet's radiation. Pike, La'an, and Mbenga and Luke on the perplexing planet strive to restore their lost memories and deal with consequences of their daily forgetfulness. So we're going to pause right here and remind everybody that if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or one of those things, we are also on YouTube. We put up the full episodes as well as segments on there. So we are available also on YouTube as full episodes plus segments of the shows and a couple original pieces here and there that we're doing. You can find us on YouTube by going to @StrangeNewTrek. So go ahead, give us a look on there. If you are watching us on YouTube or listening while looking at our static images produced by Will, please take the time to like us if you like us, dislike us if you don't like us, leave a comment, feel free to subscribe. We would be glad to have you along. And I think that kind of does it for YouTube promotion. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say it's going to go pretty good. And with one little tidbit, the more subscribers we get, the sooner we can start rolling out a bunch of different options for you, the listener. So tell your friends about us, tell your family about us, tell that annoying coworker that always steals the last cup of coffee at work about us. And please spread the word so that we can keep bringing good quality Star Trek content straight to your ears.
There we go. So on to Act 3. On the planet's surface, Luke refuses to accompany Pike and Mbenga, choosing to stay behind and face the perpetual forgetting. Despite their efforts to convince him, Luke insists that he's past the need for remembering and prefers to accept the absence and loss he feels. Lian, fading quickly, encourages them to pursue their mission, urging them to fight for her. Despite the severity of Lian's condition, Pike and Mbenga resolve to press forward and find the source of their lost memories. Just as they prepare to move closer, the tinnitus, a symptom of the planet's effects, overwhelms them. Tinnitus being ringing in the ears. You can only say ringing in the ears so many times.
Yeah. Need to break that up.
Meanwhile, aboard the Enterprise, both Spock and Ortegas experience disorientation and memory loss. They struggle to comprehend their situations and grapple with fragmented memories. Ortegas, seeking refuge in her quarters. Okay, first off, how she gets to her quarters. I don't know that this has always been a ship's function, but having lights that come up and take you right to your room.
Nice Farpoint callback, right?
Is that what? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great idea. You know, especially like on a ship with an open bar and,
Yeah.
I'm drunk and I need to get back to my room. Follow the lights.
Man, that computer was a smart aleck in this scene.
It really was. Ortega, seeking refuge in her quarters, witnesses the chaos outside caused by asteroids impacting the ship's shields. Back on the planet, Pike and Mbenga confront Kalar guards outside the palace. Utilizing the momentary confusion caused by the ringing in their ears, they incapacitate the guards, allowing Pike to proceed inside in search of their lost memories. Oh, I don't know why I would have written that down that way. Proceed inside in search of their lost memories, while Mbenga holds off the guards with a leg injury. The two are determined to retrieve their memories and save La'an despite their risks and the challenges they face. Act 4. Ortegas, initially confused and seeking escape, gradually regains her sense of purpose. She returns to the bridge of the Enterprise, taking control and skillfully navigating the Enterprise through the perilous debris field to save the crew. Okay, before this, she finds a mantra of, I'm Ortegas and I fly the ship.
Right.
And I have a feeling that's all we'll ever see her do.
Yeah, that and that little... If I thought the computer was a smart aleck in the last little bit, it really just ramped it up to 10 from where it was already at. If we're going to get out of this, it's all up to me. Affirmative.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have a beta shift helmsman.
I was just going to say, like they don't run 3 8-hour shifts of helmsman or,
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Pike confronts Nguyen, the leader of the Kalar, in the palace's throne room. In a desperate search for their lost memories, Pike discovers Starfleet supplies but realizes they are tools, not memories. Nguyen reveals that the palace's ore protects its inhabitants from radiation, rendering them immune to memory loss. He mocks Pike for believing in a myth and laughs at his attempts to retrieve their memories. So the walls of the castle and the helmets that some of the Kalar are wearing have whatever metal ore in them.
Right.
That blocks the radiation, because radiation can't come from the ground up, apparently. It all comes through your head.
Mm-hmm.
So if your head's okay...
Yeah, you're perfect.
You're fine.
Side note, this scene just made me roll my eyes so much.
There was a lot here I disliked.
Yeah.
There was a lot here I disliked.
Is it... you've seen First Blood. The original Rambo.
Yeah.
Imagine if at the ending... He's just spouting off some nonsense about looking for a Hershey bar or something while he's whooping some ass.
Yeah.
It just... I don't get it. It just has a weird vibe to it. And I feel like if Pike would remember enough about who he is to know that he doesn't belong there and how to use all this equipment that he comes a hold of.
Yeah, because I get their memories are out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like they're that out. There always seems to be some piece of something.
Right.
And In this, I think I'm getting ready to reference here, during their exchange, Pike, overwhelmed by his frustration and desperation, nearly succumbs to violence against Nguyen. He was going to stand there and beat this man to death.
More than that, he was going to kill him.
Well, beat this man to death.
Like right at the end.
Oh,
he
that's
takes
right.
That rifle out.
I forgot he got that out. I thought he was just going to thrash him to death.
He took a rifle out, turned the phaser to kill, and had it right in his head.
No, I forgot. You're right.
And that right there, as he's about to pull the trigger, is when he finally comes to.
Yeah. And
it's like, I don't even think they reference that even at the end. Like, there's just like, oh, well, it's another day on the Starship Enterprise.
Well, and they have no piece of who they are left inside during a memory loss. Because Pike is not just randomly beat a guy to death or jam a gun in his face, dude.
Selective memory loss, I guess, is what we're calling it.
Yeah.
Man, this episode sucks.
It just does not work for me. So he regains his memories somehow and then decides not to murder somebody.
Good job, Pike. Good job.
Yeah. Back on the planet's surface, M'Benga successfully treats La'an's injury, while Luke slowly recovers his memories and acknowledges his past and his son. He had a kind of tragic family background, and that's why he didn't want to recover his memories. He was okay with losing his memories because of that. But I would think if you don't have your memory, you wouldn't remember what you're trying to not remember.
We're going to get into a loop on that one, but...
That's like people you talk to who got arrested for resisting arrest, and then you ask them what the original charge was, and they're like, resisting arrest, and you're like, what is that, like a Mobius loop?
Yeah.
I can't take credit for that. That's a comedian named Keith Will Jensen who I first heard tell that joke, but this happens all the time, and that's what I'm about to do with the logic going into this episode. Returning to the Enterprise, Pike devises a solution to rid the planet of the asteroid causing the memory loss. He decides to move the asteroid away, a plan that Spock is initially cautious to do because of the Prime Directive. Ultimately, Spock changes his mind and goes along with it. Basically, the idea being that the Prime Directive wouldn't be okay with this asteroid being put here in the first place.
Again, I know you're not the biggest fan of Deep Space Nine, but there is an episode once the Maquis storyline starts kicking into full gear in that show, right? Where they're talking about Michael Eddington. And he ended up, it was the whole subplot that he took off the uniform, went to go fight for the Maquis, became a freedom fighter. And it was a personal gripe between him and Sisko because he valued the uniform and he trusted Eddington. He threw that and the uniform away. And he was,
right.
You know, lots of character development, really good episode. Don't mean to brush it off like that. But at the end, it resulted in, because they were stealing biogenic weapons and they had detonated some to make the planet uninhabitable for whoever was living there. And so he made his own, launches them at a planet full of refugees, starts spreading this poison throughout the atmosphere, and everybody's scrambling to run, and they're looking at him like, you're going mad. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing it. And he finally gives up. And at the end, they have a little conversation. They say, won't Starfleet be mad about you poisoning an entire planet? And he's like, oh, you know. That's what it feels like at the end of this one.
Yeah.
You just found your old crew member you thought was dead on some no doubt Vietnam-esque style away mission that traumatized half the crew and killed the other half. And you beat him to a pulp. Almost shoot him. And did they even pick him up?
Yeah, they said they were going to take him back, and he was going to have to, I don't know, stand trial or something. I don't remember, but yeah, they were taking him back.
See, I just finished my watch through because, again, we could go on a whole saga about me avoiding watching this episode again. I just managed to finish the watch through as of now about 2 hours ago, and I didn't even remember that one.
Yeah, and that's how much it stands out. So another thing here. And so the Prime Directive is whatever the writers need it to be. But the times where it's used to justify leaving people to die or in a worse condition than they should be in, I have trouble believing that that's what it's there for. It's there to avoid cultural contamination is what it's there for.
Right.
It's not there to go like, oh, you know, these people have a poisonous rock in their atmosphere. We can't touch it. It's part of their natural evolution.
Yeah.
Well, but is it? We don't know who put it there. We don't know how it got there.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
and just don't want it.
Yeah, I don't like the way it's, Commander, we need you to settle down, please. We know you have a lot to say, but this is not your time to say it. But I have a hard time with the episodes where the Prime Directive is used basically to damage people and just say, like, oh, can't do a darn thing about it. Like the way it's used in the episode of The Next Gen, when you have the people led by Kirk's son, who are the drug addicts, and the people led by Khan's number one dude, who are the people who supply the drugs. But the people who supply the drugs don't have spaceships, but the addicts do, but just barely. They have one working ship.
Right.
And Picard uses the Prime Directive to cut the whole thing off. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because now you're going, okay, here is the specific rule, and here's how I can keep somebody from exploiting somebody. I go all the way to the very word for both sides and cut the whole thing off. You can't use it in a way where it's just used to leave people to suffer. That just irritates me every time I see that.
Yeah.
In a poignant moment with Batel, Pike acknowledges his faults, realizing the lessons learned from the mission and their relationship. He apologizes for his behavior, recognizing Batel's guidance being similar to that of the keystone that she gave him, symbolizing her role in helping him find his way. Their reconciliation ends with a kiss and a playful promise of potential future steps in their relationship. I'm sure they're planning to go play hide the commendation in the bedsheet. That seems like that's really what they do best.
Yeah. Or the uniform code. That'd be a lot better spot.
Oh, yeah. And that is the end of that episode. I did want to bring up 2 episodes of older Star Trek. One from the original series called The Apple, where there is a computer called Vol who runs a Bronze Age group of people. And the crew of the Enterprise is like, no, see this isn't something we allow. Because they take a moral stand and stick to it. And there is also the episode Who Watches the Watchers on The Next Generation. Now, funny story about this. During the original run of The Next Generation, even with The Next Generation constantly in reruns on syndication, I had never seen this one. Our cousin Chris told me about it, and he kept trying to explain it to me. And then finally, a few years after he passed away, I finally saw it and went like, that wasn't that great an episode. But you know what? It was better than this one.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was initially ready to put it off to the Bronze Age, Stone Age, Medieval Age, Iron Age, whatever you want to call it, theme of the A-plot of this episode, because I really don't care for the high fantasy kind of things like that.
Sure.
I've never seen Lord of the Rings. Something that people still shocked about when I say
Saw the first one, never saw any more. Just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
And there are fantasy series I like.
Right.
Lord of the Rings isn't one of them.
This is where you say Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
There you go.
There's a series called Eye of the World that came out when it started when I was a teenager, ended when I was in my mid-40s. It's 14 books that are like 600 pages each that came out throughout 30 years of my life. I really enjoyed that.
Let's see, Game of Thrones for me, because it took me up until when we were in COVID to actually give it a watch.
Gotcha.
I grew up with everybody going crazy about it.
Oh, sure.
I remember when it first aired. I remember everybody talking about the spoilers, pulling up clips, going wild for it. It never interested me. And even still to this day, I look at Game of Thrones and now House of the Dragon, which hopefully is going to be coming out soon. Supposed to be soon. But, I look at that as more the exception and not the rule. When I like my fantasy stuff, I like it in space very far away from here. I don't like it 1,000 years in the past or wherever it is.
Yeah, sure.
But that's just my own personal taste. I'm not poo-pooing anything. But again, on rewatch, you find just the little things that's like, oh man, what's going on here? Like we were even talking about that just before we started recording when you mentioned Highlander 2.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When you watch it the second time, it just, so much of the little stuff pops out because you're sucked out. It's like, oh, I know what's going to happen. So it lets you focus on the more little nitpicky details, you know? And it's really hard to kind of stay out of that nitpick zone, especially when you just don't like what you're watching. And I'm really trying not to take it there with this episode.
Yeah.
Because that's not what I'm trying to put out at all. I'm sure there are people out there that love this episode.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things I try to be careful of. Just because I don't like it, I don't expect other people to not like it. Or like, your reaction to the episode is yours. I'm not trying to interfere with that in any ways. That's my prime directive. Your fandom is your fandom. I try not to be involved.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, Henry, we're going to introduce a new segment, probably from here on out. A little thing I'm going to call Subspace Communications.
Oh, boy.
One of the best things about being on YouTube is the fact that everybody can chime in. Like it, dislike it, whatever. So, in no particular order, for no particular reason, I just grabbed a handful and we're just going to read them and then kind of discuss them for a few minutes.
Sounds good. Let's see what the people got for us.
Yep. So the first one is from the segment called Changes in the Time Stream, which is Season 2, Episode 3 of Strange New Worlds. And then it's our Episode 40, Segment 11. So if you take the entire Episode 40 of ours and look at Segment 11, that's this. Mark Taylor 3727 says, my thinking on this is that, let me make sure I follow this correctly now. My thinking on this is that it is not just the Romulans that do the time travel. So this is talking about the Romulans interfering with the past. And now you have big time discrepancies in OST. And I'm guessing that stands for Original Star Trek. World War III happens in 1996.
You know what? Not to cut you off, but that might be original series timeline, maybe.
Okay, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, that was the World War III thing that cleared.
Yeah. World War III happened in 1996. Well, that has not happened yet, but the way I see how to get around this is time travel now. This is a little harder to read than it was when I read it quietly to myself. Yes, they can go back in time just to observe, so no time interference. It's not going back in time and interacting in that time when the problems arrive, because, so basically what I think he's trying to say, sorry, when I read this internally, it was a lot easier to follow. Now that I'm trying to do it out loud, my unnecessary pauses are making it harder to read than it actually is. But the way I took it was that everybody's meddling with the past.
Right.
And there's this thing in like Doctor Who where they talk about time discrepancies. They're like, we're dealing with the show about time travel. There is no such thing as a discrepancy.
Right.
Because once there's time travel involved,
everything's on the table.
Off screen, somebody else went back and fixed it. And after reading Mark's comment, I was even thinking that everything actually happens. This kind of gets meta. So when you watch Star Trek, the original series, World War III was in the 90s. Because by then something else had happened in time that had put it in that time period.
Right.
And then by the time you get around to Enterprise, Strange New Worlds, and they move it to make it work with that time period, well, when you watch those series, that is when it happened.
Right.
Was the later time periods. So the history is always going to shift some. And because there's time travel, and now especially with this establishing Romulans intentionally trying to take Earth out by messing with its history.
Right.
Now we can just say, hey, things happen when they happen. The dates aren't that important because there's time travel all over the place. And you add in things like the temporal Cold War. Mm-hmm. And yeah, time is always monkeyed with. So yeah, them saying it happened in 1996 in one show and 2026 in another, there's still no discrepancy.
Right.
Because there's been time travel in the meantime that moved those dates around.
Monkeying it about, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what Klingon time travelers would be.
Well, they got time crystals, man.
That'd be wild.
They just grab
Klingons out of Woodstock in 1969, man.
Nobody'd even know because they'd still just be stinky long hairs.
Get us that movie.
Yeah.
Is that the Worf movie coming out?
Maybe.
That'd be good.
They're going to do a lot of LDS in the 60s at Berkeley.
There you go.
Yeah. From the same episode, Mac McLeod 1188, speaking of Highlander, I have no interest in any Star Trek series based on the Kelvin timeline. A friend told me some of the new series are not based on the Kelvin timeline, and I found I really am not interested in Star Trek anymore at all because of the Kelvin timeline stories. The last Star Trek story I was truly interested in was Axanar. CBS was a fool to squash that project instead of picking it up. I think just about every TOS Star Trek fan would have watched it religiously, and it would have been picked up, and an audience would have been picked up. An audience along modern viewers as well. Okay, so saying that original viewers and modern viewers would have watched it. Well,
breathe and release, Cap. Breathe and release.
Yeah. It's lack of punctuation. And I realize when I write comments, I don't capitalize. I don't use punctuation. I also don't try to go back and read it out loud.
I am one of the Somebody made a video, actually, that my channel's in and a bunch of others. I am one of the apparently 168 at the time channels on YouTube with the name Dutch Vanderland and a Red Dead Redemption 2 picture as my profile.
Oh, I would assume so.
So I always have a little template set up. Arthur, I have a plan, and would just type my comment in there and throw it up. So mine's already pre-done for me because half my comment's already done for me.
Sure.
But if I just had my own personal account, which I'm not going to give out, just going around typing on comments or whatever, then yeah, no capitals, no commas, no nothing.
Yeah.
I just want to say my piece.
Yeah, well, you're quickly tapping with your thumbs on a device the size of 2 business cards and,
Right.
But yeah, the thing we don't think of is that somebody may try to read this out loud. And it's going to be a mess,
Yeah, not to rip on you or anything, Mac. We're just talking shop here for internet.
Yep. So I had a podcast way back when the Axonar stuff was going on. I interviewed some of the people about the way behind scenes. And there are things about Alec Peters that I know that would have kept me from watching Axonar. There was the constantly moving goalposts, the fundraising that's never quite enough while him and his friends are eating $1,000 sushi dinners. I interviewed his girlfriend at the time who was going to do the same thing with the Supergirl movie they were doing with Axonar, and they had already started their second fundraiser. There's a whole set of things in here. Parts of Axonar look cool. Alec Peters playing Garth Vizar when Alec Peters couldn't act and didn't know how to fold the Starfleet tunic and it really looked mechanical was bad. I'm not going to get into the whole thing. There are things, I think a lot of my friends would have loved to have seen Axonar come out.
I know personally when I watched the little 30-minute prelude that they had,
Axonar. Yeah.
I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good.
But it's stuff like selling coffee with pictures of Klingon birds of prey and using Star Trek trademarks when you have no right to them.
Yeah.
There are things there. I don't think either one of us ever said that we wanted to see a Kelvin Timeline series.
No.
But I think I said something about now that both are in-house at Paramount instead of one at CBS and one at Paramount.
Right.
That it would be interesting to see something cross over.
I think a lot of people, especially when Discovery first came out, when the trailers first came out, they kind of assumed that...
Oh, for a couple years after Discovery started, they tried to insist that it was part of the Kelvin timeline, and they do things like, they said licensing, not realizing that licensing goes in 2 directions.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and to my knowledge, other than a little throwaway segment that they had in one of the later seasons of Discovery, I don't think any of the new Star Trek we've had has any connection to the Kelvin timeline.
No, it just, just similar special effects because that's the era we live in.
Right.
All right, so the next we are going to deal with references a segment called An Unloved Show Called Enterprise, which is based off Strange New World Season 2, Episode 3. It's our Episode 40, Segment 8. And this is from Jay, so that's at JAYTM2574. Loved Enterprise. It had heart, and then parentheses, and quotes, faith of heart, literally, in parentheses, and was beaten to death by the UPN network. I will give you that 100%.
Yeah.
Because the original plan for the show was the first year of the show was going to be them building the Enterprise. It wasn't going to be about them on the ship.
Right.
There were a lot of concepts that UPN insisted to be in there. The temporal Cold War, they wanted an overarching story from the beginning. The other thing that I know, and I don't know if anybody from UPN would back this up, they wanted a hot chick in a cat suit right off the bat.
Yep.
Because the producers of the show went, I know what you masturbating perverts who like sci-fi want to see. We proved it with 7 of 9, and we're just going to stick it in right from the beginning.
Yep.
7 of 9 and T'Pol are 2 characters that I felt like Star Trek was talking down to me when they were introduced.
They felt like the same character at points, too.
And, they were fine in ways.
Yeah.
Both actresses, good to great in their roles. I don't want to take anything away from them because they did their jobs. Both very lovely women. I mean, you can see where the casting came from, and that's what made it feel like it was talking down to me.
Yeah. I'm a Voyager fan. We've talked about that one before, you know. So I'm willing to kind of, at least in terms of Voyager, see past we need a blonde bombshell to raise these mid-run ratings.
These middling ratings that we have.
Yeah. And definitely not the best Voyager seasons 1 through 4, although I have a lot of personal favorites in all 4 seasons. But when it comes to 7 of 9, specifically, I thought for the plot that they ran for the show, I thought it was very good. But what really struck me about Enterprise is when they started bringing in these random decontamination room scenes where they'd be all half naked inside of a UV light room, rubbing each other down with lotion and everything. And I'm just like, God.
Well, just like I said, to me, that felt like they were talking down to me.
Well, that's where I started getting that same feeling is what I'm getting at.
And you can't tell me that wasn't a producer going...
Yeah, that was a Harvey Weinstein Jr. back there.
From the same episode, at Marcus Clinton 310 says, Enterprise is awesome. Some people are just too critical for their own good. Is he talking about us?
Maybe talking about me, because I kind of have a habit of bringing up Enterprise just to kind of smack down on it. Full disclosure, though, I do it in jest. Like I've said before, it took me a while to get through Enterprise and to not be genuinely critical about it.
I've still never watched it all the way through. I've seen episodes. I've seen like what people would call like the top 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not like these days, especially this far out. If I came across an episode on TV and there wasn't something else going on, I'd probably watch it and be fine with it. It was one of, so I've told you this before. I've said it to other friends of mine. I love the original Star Trek. I love The Next Generation. I like Lower Decks. So far, besides this episode, I love Strange New Worlds. I'm not the biggest fan of Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery. You know, so I like about half of television Star Trek.
Right.
I still think I'm a fan. If you tell me you liked one episode of the animated series in 1973, I still think you're a fan.
Right.
Not everything appeals to everybody.
That's true.
Enterprise didn't appeal to me. And again, I felt like it was talking to me like I was a masturbating pervert and an idiot.
Right.
That's what I felt a lot of it was saying. Also, post 9/11, everything on TV was a 9/11 allegory. Star Trek Enterprise did it.
Yep.
And I didn't want to see more of that at the time. I already didn't warm up to some of it because I felt like it was more of a prequel to Next Gen than it was to original Trek. It just didn't work for me. Now, all these years later, it'd probably be just fine. It probably wouldn't trigger me that way because I don't get as intensely bothered by fandom the way I used to.
Right.
But that's for me. But also, I do want to say, what was your name again here? Marcus Clinton 310? Saying some people are just too critical for their own good is an awfully critical thing to say.
He's got you there, pal.
Mm-hmm. The next one from Kevin Vernon, 3600. The Romulan starship in the Balance of Terror was a warbird, not a bird of prey.
You're wrong.
Wrong. Oh, you are so very, 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 very wrong.
Like the sky is green and the grass is blue wrong.
Yeah, you couldn't be wronger if you tried.
You, sir, have won the official Strange New Trek Wrongest Person of the Week award. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Kevin Vernon, 3600, the wrongest person of the week. And finally, from Mikey Mike 1.618. Enterprise was much better than Next Generation or any of the other spinoffs.
The neck here?
Yeah, let me kind of warm up for this one here.
Yeah.
You can say you like Enterprise better than the Next Generation. You cannot say it was a better show because, first off, Enterprise was canceled. Next Generation ran 7 seasons and got 4 movies. It had a much broader mainstream appeal.
Not to mention a modern spin-off which raked in millions of views.
And during its height, I believe Star Trek The Next Generation got more than 10 million viewers an episode. And I don't think Enterprise even cracked a fraction of that number. I'd have to go back and look, but something tells me it wouldn't have been canceled if it did.
Yeah. when they're canceling your show to make room for more episodes of The Sentinel,
Yeah.
you're wrong, buddy.
What was the Sentinel?
Exactly.
Okay. You know what, Kevin Vernon, 3600. I'm taking back your award. You are not the wrongest person of the week. Mikey Mike 1.618. You are the wrongest person of the week.
You, sir, have won the award. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mikey Mike 1.618. Hey, but you know what? Now that all that smart assery is out of the way, I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to write in. There were a lot of comments that I would have liked to have put in here. One guy actually was responding to the Terminator thing, and I would have loved to have handled that, but we would have been here for 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
We may do an episode where we discuss time travel.
Or maybe we already did it.
Or maybe when we premiere the episode that we have already recorded possibly of Star Trek's time travel, we will add that comment in and then discuss it a little bit, because it gets into double bootstrap paradoxes and some really just brain-shattering things. And time travel is one of those things I can fall down a well, because the grandparent thing, the grandfather paradox.
Right.
You go back in time and shoot our grandfather. Now, neither one of us exist, but you're not there to go back in time and shoot our grandfather.
So therefore, we're back.
Oh,
I have a headache.
Yep. You don't even have to go further than that. And I'm already just like...
And we gave the commander a headache,
yeah,
too.
The commander's already complaining about time travel. She hates time travel stories. But yeah, I want to thank everybody. I realize we might have poked a little fun at some people there, and the ones I'd really want to tear into, I didn't even mention. But other people who I did mention, it's because some of your stuff got deep, and I'd want to spend more time on it. So please, if you're on YouTube and you're commenting, please keep it up. We will try to respond to what we feel probably merits a response. Odds are I won't respond in text to the message itself. It'll probably be in the show.
Yeah, and even if you got something good to say, something bad to say, something middle to say, we will
say it.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, please do.
We love hearing from you guys. We love interacting with you guys, and you guys in the end make our show what it is. So please, by all means, keep sending everything in.
Yeah. And if you are listening to us on your podcast outlet rather than through YouTube, please go ahead and like and subscribe on there. Leave a 5-star review. But if you only kind of like the show, leave a 5-star review and then shit on us in the comments.
Any press is good press. Yeah. So handle it to us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so I've got Commander Dog trying to get her way to the microphone right now. So I do want to say thank you, because I've been forgetting to do so. Thank you to Miguel Esparza of the band Hatriot for our theme song. Thank you to Will Hard. Okay, I almost just messed up his name now. Hang on, William. I say this guy's name every day, and now I'm suddenly going, what's his name?
Oh, man. The next generated cover image now is going to be us hanging from a rope.
Yeah, William Harding. I don't know how I got that wrong, because Macho Man's dad screwed him out of $1,000 back in the 70s. This guy's got a famous pro wrestling story. I've been friends with him 5 or 6 years now, and I just blanked his name completely. William Harding, who runs our YouTube page, who does our thumbnails, which have been pretty excellent here lately. So thank you, William, for taking care of that. Thank you, everybody who listens. Thank you, Henry, for joining me.
And thank you, Jeremy, for inviting me.
And thank you, Commander Dog, for not getting completely obnoxious this week.
Good job, Commander.
Bye-bye, everybody.